The holiday named Columbus Day may be no more. On October 19th, the City Council will vote on whether or not to change the name to Indigenous Peoples Day. Here's more from the Special Programs and Services Committee meeting. On October 8th, Newton City Council's Special Programs and Services Committee held a special meeting to have a public hearing on replacing Columbus Day with Indigenous Peoples Day. 14 states and more than 130 cities currently observe Indigenous Peoples Day instead of or in addition to Columbus Day. Indigenous Peoples Day is a holiday that celebrates and honors Native American peoples and commemorates their histories and cultures.
I want to start by just expressing my concerns about this public hearing. I voted against it. I disagree, although I have great respect for my colleague, Councilor Greenberg, that Italian Americans were not heard. I feel like the narrative of Italian Americans has been heard repeatedly. This is actually the second bite of the apple on this item. And I just want to, at the outset, express my grave concerns for the amount of damage we will do to each other as a community, to the hurtful and painful things that Indigenous people will have to hear.
Both sides discussed their thoughts during public comment. Much of the discussion revolved around Indigenous folks and Italian Americans.
This is an important step our community can take to begin to undo the harm done to Indigenous peoples in this country.
As an Italian American, I am personally ashamed by the use of an oppressive bully such as Columbus to honor our Italian heritage. I'd use harsher terms, but I know my students are listening.
This open public hearing is potentially an opportunity for community members to hear and learn about history. And in that way, it's part of the process of healing that I believe we must embrace. But to think that there are two sides of the issue and to frame the discussion as being between Italian Americans on the one hand and Indigenous people on the other is unhelpful and false.
Columbus Day may represent a point of pride. I understand that. I do. Pride in your heritage is a powerful thing. But I also understand that the people who need your advocacy the most are the people who are relegated to the footnotes of our history books.
It's super difficult because no one wants to give anything up. But as Italian Americans, we're in this really tough position, and I want to speak to the struggle and explain why we shouldn't center this discussion on our hardships, because we're so lucky. Being Italian American has not always been the honor it is now. For our immigrant ancestors, we were treated as second-class citizens. But the problem is they picked the wrong guy. Columbus didn't make Italian Americans great. Our ancestors did.
My Italian American pride is formed by other connections. It's forged in family, food, community, and a rich history from the Roman Empire to the Renaissance. I've always had more than enough to be proud of as an Italian without Columbus.
Maybe those cities are like ours in that they have an extensive Italian American population that has been here for generations. I suggest that we rename Columbus Day to a title that reflects a day of Italian American heritage. Recently, the Christopher Columbus statue in Columbus Park in the North End of Boston was beheaded. Boston Mayor Marty Walsh has chosen to house it at the Knights of Columbus, visible to anyone that wants to see it. The statue that will replace it will reflect, quote, the contributions of the North End Italian immigrant community, Walsh stated. That was the original intent of the statue.
I am chair of the Metro West Italian Alliance, Italian American Alliance, and we absolutely understand the Indigenous people have a totally different opinion of Christopher Columbus than many of us, many of our Italian American Alliance people, and many of Italians. However, we have urged you for almost 2 years to please read 2 books by scholars Carolyn Delaney and Mary Graybar. To date, we have not heard if you have read that. In an attempt to defend our heritage, we have always been polite and factual and non-confrontational. Our civility has been returned with name-calling. It really baffles me. I understand, I suppose, if you would like to make Christopher Columbus Day Italian Heritage Day. But it's mean-spirited when you already have a month and a day to try and completely ignore the Italian heritage.
Columbus never owned a slave. And if you really, really look at the fact, genocide is not the unintentional clash of microbes. Genocide is the deliberate doing away with people, which Columbus never did. And when it comes to slavery, the Indians were practicing slavery 250 years before Columbus ever left Spain. So this is a lie. It's perpetrated, but it's not going to change your minds, because this is what you're going to vote for. And I think you're making a mistake. We'll be back next year, but I can tell you that some of you will not be here.
I didn't know that Newton had such a large number of learned historians that know so much about Columbus, like they have a master's degree or PhD in it. History is not black and white, even though everybody in this country is being led to believe that it is, and that the Americans invented slavery, and it's crazy. It's a waste of my time talking to you, because everyone is a social justice warrior. You think you're going to save the world by changing a holiday, and guess what? Doesn't Newton City Councilor have anything important to do for this city? Obviously, the most important thing is talking about changing the name of holidays. So have a great time. I'm sorry I'm paying for your increased pay and salary, but you don't deserve a penny of it if you vote for this. Thank you.
People are just going off the rails complaining. And what we should be thinking about is who are the hurt people and who needs to be helped.
I was asked to read a statement from representatives of Indigenous Peoples Day, MA.org. Dear members of the Newton City Council and Mayor Fuller, we have created videotaped testimony of several Indigenous people and a non-Native historian in support of the Indigenous Peoples Day resolution that has been presented in Newton. Here's the link to the videos, and I will forward that to Nathan to our committee clerk to include in our packet so that it's available to the public. We have taken this step because Newton's October 8th public hearing parameters would not allow us to properly present educational information about the need to abolish Columbus Day and replace it with Indigenous Peoples Day. We requested a discrete and fixed amount of time in which we could make a proper presentation without being interrupted, but we're denied that. In particular, we are choosing not to speak in a forum that platforms people who present false history and deny Indigenous genocide, and where we would be limited to 2 minutes each to be able to speak about our history and current conditions. Additionally, we do not believe that the council would force this sort of format on other people, such as Armenians and Jews, who might come before the body to give a presentation about their own people's genocide. We cannot help but remark that the privileging of bigoted white voices is part of how anti-Indigenous racism and white supremacy play out in the United States. A critical part of considering an Indigenous Peoples Day resolution is to center and listen to Indigenous voices. We hope that you will take the time to listen to this powerful testimony. You will learn a lot by doing so. Thank you.
This will be on the agenda for the October 19th.
Reporting from Newton City Hall, I'm Katie Mulcairn with Newton News.